Morning is probably one of the harder mornings, but we have to make it worth staying overnight last night and having our nice activities last night by learning a few things this morning. So I appreciate you hanging with us, and we will definitely get you out on time, if not a little early, it sounds like. So it'll pay off. I do want to talk about the salary ordinances. I know I didn't get to this last night or last evening, and I wanted to do that because there were several questions about salary ordinances, and it's something that there's been a lot of questions about it recently. It is an important part of planning and budgeting, and it also is required to satisfy some statutory requirements and to do some formal documentation of policies and procedures. And so we wanted you to be able to have a little information about it, and we haven't talked about it for a very long time. These are the items that I'm going to cover, and it really represents the approach that I took in kind of researching the salary ordinance. You all know I'm an auditor, so I'm after the fact is when I come in. I'm not used to being on the planning end of things, and so I had to do a little research about the salary ordinance and really get into it. And so I started, of course, with the statutory requirements and then went on through some other items of note that I found in my digging. These are the three main statutory requirements or guidance that we have when it comes to salary ordinance, so I wanted you to have those in your presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these. This first statute describes the county council's responsibility and their power over compensation. I think you guys pretty much understand that they have a duty to fix the compensation of the officers, deputies, and employees. Maybe some of the others don't understand or would like to think that they are outside of those limits, and there are some exceptions, not as many as some people would lead you to believe. So we'll talk about those exceptions as well. When they gave the council this power, it includes the power to fix the number of officers, deputies, and other employees, as well as their compensation, gives them the power to describe and classify positions and services. As you've gone through either a benchmarking process in your county or you've done new job classifications, it seems like there's always questions, and people don't want to think that this really is a council or commissioner type power. They want to think that you can do this within your offices. Certainly, we hope that you have input in those processes, but it is a county council responsibility and power. The statute does give us the process for adopting a salary ordinance, and it begins by saying before July 2nd of each year, those subject to this budget chapter have to file with the county auditor a statement that shows in detail the positions for which compensation will be requested in the budget and the amount or rate of compensation that's proposed for each full-time and part-time position. It also tells us in the statute that the salary ordinance has to be on a form prescribed by State Board of Accounts. We have prescribed Form 144, Statement of Salaries and Wages Proposed to be Paid to Officers and Employees. We probably could have added a couple of more words to that title, take up more room on the form, but yeah, it's a lengthy name. But the 144 is the form that we typically used, and we did create this many, many, many years before all of us to comply with these statutory requirements. But things change and have a way of getting more complicated as we live our lives. And it was in no way meant to take away any flexibility of your council in setting compensation. You know, there's times we don't have much money now, but we promise things on down the road like retirements and pensions to try to attract the best people for the jobs. There's times when we do have money and we say we're going to live within our means and we're just going to offer money and we want to reduce some of those benefits. There's times when health insurance was cheaper. We could offer good health insurance instead of pay, and now it's getting more expensive and we'd rather offer more pay and not give you insurance. So there's a lot of things that councils have tried to be creative and use over the years. And even though this form is a very simple form that just has lines and you put in positions and amounts of compensation, we don't mean for it to take away anything that the council can come up with as a form of compensation. They can use that flexibility. So this form, even though it's not laid out with anything fancy, you have the options to put, if you pay biweekly, you might want to put the biweekly amount on. A lot of counties have gone to that because it resolves the 26 pay, 27 pay kind of thing. People's compensation doesn't go up and down each pay because their biweekly pay is in the salary ordinance. It's not the annual pay. Still gives you a tool for planning what amount has to go in the annual budget, but you can do that. Some counties have bonuses or longevity pay, those kinds of things. Sometimes it's in a policy. Sometimes it's a line that's added in the salary ordinance. Hey, we give longevity pay. So those things can be in there. Any extra stipends that people get, for example, I think the clerk of the court, if they are the voter registration officer, they're entitled to a per diem. Well, the amount's not set in the statute, so if the council sets that per diem, you may have in there the clerk's biweekly compensation, and you may also have an extra per diem for serving as the voter registration amount set in the salary ordinance. You can pay ranges. Some counties say that when a person is first hired, if you're a new employee for the first 6 months, your pay is, 5% less until you get through your probationary period. And so there might be ranges in there. All of those things are acceptable as long as it does what the statute requires, which is it tells us the amount of compensation, how to find that amount of compensation for an officer or an employee, and it gives us the number of positions. Okay, so as long as it does those two things, you can put extra wording into your salary ordinance and make it work for you. You all know that you present these statements to the county executive at their July meeting, and then they consider them and make their recommendations to the county council before August 20th, and this is all done through the budget process. You'll even notice that the statutes we've talked about so far are all in the budget laws, and that's not my area of expertise, but certainly did send a presentation to the DLGF for them to review before I spoke, because this is a chapter that they're much more well-versed in talking about. To continue the process, the county council adopts your salary ordinance at their annual meeting. It is an ordinance that's required to be separate from the budget ordinance that they adopt, and it does have to do those two things we talked about. Set the number of positions, full-time positions, and set the compensation of all the deputies, officers, and employees. Now, this annual meeting of the fiscal body is the same meeting where they do adopt the budget ordinance and the tax rate. It is held under a statute in IC 6 1.117, and it has to be held no later than November 1st. It does have to be, the salary ordinance does have to be in the form of an ordinance. A lot of times we go into counties, we don't actually see an ordinance. We see the 144, and that's fine. There are some exceptions to the salary ordinance guidance that we've seen so far in this presentation. I wanted to point those out. The Board of Local Health Departments is to prescribe the duties of its officers and employees. They are to recommend the number of positions. Doesn't say they set them, but that board has the power to describe and classify positions and the services they offer. They also have the power to adopt their schedule of compensation. There's another exception for community corrections programs. The advisory board for community corrections sets the compensation. It is to be set in a manner that it is not inconsistent with other county positions that are similar. We've had a lot of questions about this. Many of you do get from the advisory board their salaries, and you put it in your salary ordinance, and that's great. Others of you have a board that doesn't want their community corrections salaries included in your salary ordinance, so you may just end up getting whatever salary schedule they have adopted and not including it in your 144, and that is also acceptable. And when we look at the budget chapter, there is a major exclusion for the salaries of judges, officers of the court, prosecuting attorneys, and deputy prosecuting attorneys whose salaries are fixed by statute. But the county fiscal body may make additional appropriations, or not additional appropriations, that's the wrong word, make appropriations to pay them additional compensation for judges and the prosecuting attorneys. It can't exceed the $5,000 per year. For the deputy prosecutors, they can, there's not a cap, but they are not subject to submitting that salary ordinance to you for the court employees, so just be mindful of that. I know that's, most of the time you guys are great at working it out with the judges and the prosecutors, but there are a few that will fight you, and just try to get the information you need to make sure that the council can move forward through the budget process, and that's about all you can do. That's all our expectation is of you. There are benefits to following this process. It's been laid out in statute for a very long time, and one of the major benefits is that, first of all, we ensure that we're in compliance with the statute, which no one wants to find themselves outside of that. But it's also a preliminary step to preparing your budget estimate. Our human capital, or our personnel costs, are a major part of our expenses. I mean, we are public servants. It's in the word. Service is what we provide, and we need people to provide that service, and so it's a major part of any budget. And so once you have this, you've got a good portion of the budget that you really can't do a whole lot about set, so you're ready to go and find your other supplies, capital outlay, and other types of necessary expenditures. A couple of things I wanted to bring to your attention regarding this is that regardless of whether there's going to be an amount in the salary ordinance for your assessor, your deputy assessors, and if they attain their level 2 while they're in office, or a level 3 while they're in office, then they are entitled to $1,000 annually in addition to, but not part of, their compensation. And they went and specifically got this language put in the statute so that they did not have to amend salary ordinances, because they're elected officials and it can't be changed in the year once it's set. So that's an exception. You can go ahead and the council needs to go ahead and figure out how they're going to pay that additional compensation, whether it's going to be in a lump sum or whether it's going to be divided out or in one paycheck during the year. But however they're going to do that, they can go ahead and pay that, even though it may not be included in your salary ordinance. Same thing is true for the deputy assessing officials. Their amount is $500, but it's the same language in the statute. This statute tells us that the county fiscal body shall, in the manner prescribed in IC 3625, which is the budget law we've been talking about through this salary ordinance process, or in the manner that's in IC 3626, fix the appropriate money to pay the per diems established in this chapter and the salaries and per diems of the county's township assessors, if you have township assessors, and their deputies when they do assessing duties. So the salary ordinance may include these per diems for assessing duties within the townships. It is our recommendation that it be included in the salary ordinance, but it can also be set out by the procedures in IC 3626. We do recommend to the township officials, if you still have some township assessing officials, that they submit to you a Form 144, just like the other offices and departments do, so that you can then combine those into a single 144 for township assessing duties altogether. Yes? Okay, her question was that her assessor turns in for 7 days a week of assessing duties in their township, and she wants to know if they can allow that, or, you know, because she's pretty sure they're not working 7 days a week year round. You're going to collect the information. It may be something you want to point out to the county executive as well as the county council, because these go to the county executive first and they make recommendations then to the council, but ultimately it's the council's decision. And so, but sometimes if you don't bring it to their attention, they're very busy during this time of year and they may not have noticed that. I mean, it's, you know, it's going to be ultimately the total amount of money is going to be about the same as it was the year before that, and so they may not be noticing it, but it is up to them of whether they want to approve it or not. Oops. Okay, where did I go? Okay. This statute's one that's pretty important. I use it a lot to answer questions. We get a lot of questions, and people don't automatically apply it. They know it's there, but I don't think they automatically apply it when they're thinking about their individual situations. You know, people, it's human nature. We all tend to do whatever needs to be done. So that means a lot of the people in the county are doing a lot of jobs. You know, another job comes along, oh, I'll just do that on Saturday. I'll do this, you know. Well, this statute really says that except as provided in sections 6, 9, and 13, which we'll go over in the next slide, the compensation fixed for county officers and employees under this title, so under Title 36 and in the salary ordinance, is in full for all governmental services and in lieu of all other fees, per diems, penalties, costs, interests, forfeitures, percentages, commissions, allowances, mileage, and other remuneration that shall be paid into the county general fund. No extra stipends unless there's a law that says you get it or it's in the salary ordinance. So, you know, all those clerk deputies that want to go out and perform a wedding ceremony on Saturday, well, they can only perform a marriage solemnation because they are a deputy clerk. And their pay in the salary ordinance is in full for all the services that they do, whether they do them on Saturday or not, whether they do it in the courthouse or not. If they're a notary and you want them to work in your office to be able to notarize documents, that's fine. They can notarize documents for people who come in, but they can't get any extra pay. They get paid what's in the salary ordinance. So just try to keep that in mind, because a lot of the departments and officers do ask questions about that. The exceptions in sections 3, 6, 9, and 13 that we talked about are you are allowed mileage reimbursements for travel in your personal vehicles. The sheriff is allowed tax warrant fees and even meal allowances if that's still provided for in your county and he doesn't have a contract. And assessors can receive their reassessment per diem. There's also a voter registration per diem for the clerk if they serve in that position, and we talked a little bit about that. It's in a separate statute, but it is an exception to that law. Of course, the amount has to be set somewhere because it's not a statute. All right, changes in your compensation, are governed by this statute 36-2-5-13. I think you've all run into that at some point or another. A few years back, AIC worked really hard with your affiliate associations to make sure there was a way for newly elected officials' pay to be changed if it was if they met certain criteria. So that's what we've included on this slide. And unless there's any other questions, I'll move on to your questions from the question box. Okay.